Welcome to the Vitality Show, Eric. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Kyle.
I guess I want you to introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing and where you're at in this life.
Yeah, well, I'm a professor at Penn State. I'm a professor of criminology in the Department of Sociology and Criminology. So I've been doing that for a number of years, as you can see.
Mm-hmm.
Hair.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
At least you got hair.
Well, yeah, right. I was joking. The red light therapy, I told a friend, I saw a black hair, and then it fell out. But yeah, so I've been at Penn State about 10 years. Before that, I was at Florida State University.
Nice.
Yeah,
Oh, that's a big difference.
it's a huge difference. That first year wore a lot of layers.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is. I always think about like what would it be like to live down in Florida. My brother's actually moving there, so maybe I'll get a little taste of it. And then I went down for a clinic, maybe in August, and it was horrible. I was so hot. I was just like could not stop sweating.
You walk out in the middle at like 5 a.m. and it's just you're drenched.
Yeah,
right?
it was a swamp. But anyway, yeah. And here we just get freezing cold all the time.
For quite a long time, yeah.
It's like, what do you pick your poison a little bit.
Yeah.
Alligators and swamp or snow and ice roads.
Yeah.
So anyway, so you came up here 10 years ago and keep going.
Yeah. So I before I came up here when I was in Florida, I took up triathlons.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I was, a college soccer player. And so I always kind of looking for something to kind of keep that competitive spirit going.
Where'd you go to college?
A little small college called Rockhurst College.
Okay. Where's that?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
so are you a Chiefs fan? Just tell me.
No, you know what? I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, okay.
So I was a St. Louis football Cardinals fan, and then they left to go to Arizona. I've been without a team for a long time.
You've been riding solo.
Yeah, but when I was a kid, you were either a Dallas Cowboys fan or a Pittsburgh Steelers fan.
Oh.
And I had the Pittsburgh Steelers coat.
So it comes full circle. You're back in the state of Pennsylvania.
Here. That's right.
You feel like you're at home here.
I kind of do, yeah. You know what? I actually do. It reminds me of kind of a gritty, blue collar, people are really down to earth. I do feel like it reminds me of home.
That's cool.
Yeah, always have.
Yeah. I feel similar I grew up in a small town, Lansing, New York, upstate. We're right next to Cornell University, so it's a little Ivy League, I would say. But for the most part, it's just like if you get 10 miles outside of Ithaca, it's all country, gritty people, working at the Cargill or it used to be called Milliken Station, but anyway, so it was just a bunch of really cool people.
That's cool.
My dad grew up there, so I love being there. I lived there my whole life.
Yeah.
And then this is my first time being away from upstate New York. So I moved down here a couple of years ago, 2022. So
wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So we came down here to start this thing up, and now we're just rocking and rolling, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
It's an amazing place.
So how'd you find us?
Well, I think part of the move to triathlon was to just avoid injury because my body was like, ankles and knees were getting to that point where moving laterally was more difficult. So I thought cycling, swimming, biking would be great. And which was kind of a risk because I didn't really, I had been swimming as a kid, but not in the ocean or
that's
dark
a lot
lakes.
Different.
Yeah. And learning that as an adult was pretty scary because you see kids, they're just fearless, but as an adult, what can happen.
Yeah.
Right. So, So I started doing that and thinking about longevity and wellness, and increasingly I love cycling. That's kind of the thing that I'm best at of the three. Anyway, so last summer I was ramping up my training to do what I'm now doing is just swim and bike races because for longevity I think that like those are low impact things I could do until I'm 100.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I would just, need more time to recover in between rides, like hard rides, or especially around here, it's very hilly.
Yeah.
So I saw this. I'm like, and they had these compression boots.
Yeah.
And I had been watching the Tour de France. And
Yeah.
it's what they do after they ride every day, right?
Yeah.
They put the boots on. So that's probably what caught my attention.
That's cool.
And then when I got in here, I had been listening to all sorts of things about longevity.
Yeah.
And so all the things you have here, just amazing. So I just started doing that, and I noticed such a massive shift. I was able to recover more quickly.
Yeah.
And then I felt stronger, and I ended up just having this really kind of second half seasons, just really great
Really?
Yeah. So my performance went up, and so that kind of hooked me.
Yeah. Performance was like the reason we started this whole thing. So myself and David Taylor started it, and we were fierce competitors from 2011, 12 until 2016. And so we were like at each other's throats, but we were so similar. So we became friends at training camp out in Colorado Springs, and we would just play poker. And the funny thing is because we competed so much on the mat, every single hand he wanted to be in that I was in. And I would, if I was in a hand, I probably had a really strong hand, and he would try to come in and bluff. And I would just, a lot of times I would just take him out.
Oh, wow.
And he would just get so mad. He's a better poker player than I am, but it's so funny to just like play with him. And then we became friends, basically accidentally, not really, became friends over that. Because before college, David and I were, I would go to his house and train, and he would come to my house and train. Oh, wow. So one year we were like freshmen in high school, and he kicked my butt like real bad. No, he was from St. Edward, Ohio. That's the high school he went to. Gotcha. And then I was obviously in Lansing, and it was funny because the coach that one of his coaches in high school, his son coached at Cornell. So he was there for a little bit. So we convinced him to come out, and he stayed with Coach DeSalvo, and then would come stay at my house, and we would train for a week in the summer. And then during Thanksgiving, I would go to his house because my family's from Ohio. So we would drive out to Ohio, Ashland, Ohio. We'd stay there for a day or two. And then my dad and I, or my mom and I, would drive down to David's house a couple hours away, and we would train for 4 or 5 days, and then we'd come back, and that would be that. But so we were friends before. Yeah. And then we got to college, and I was at 149 my sophomore year, and then he was redshirting. 141, and he was redshirting. Then I went 149, and he was at 157. So we were different weight classes. Okay. So we still talked to each other. And then my senior year, the summer before, we wrestled in a tournament, and I bumped up and I wrestled him and I beat him. And it was just like this thing. And then they wanted us to wrestle at the All-Star Classic. So that was like a preseason exhibition. And my coach was like, hey, our team's going to be better if you go 165. Like, are you okay with that? And I was like, sure, let's go. So then that's when our rivalry really started. But then in 2018, we both went to the World Championships for our first time. We both won the World Championships, and it was just like we were buds again. And it was because we were so similar. Like we just had some of the same interests. And then we would talk about like, how can we enhance our performance? Like, what do we have to do? Like, what foods are you eating? How are you eating them? Like, what timing? Like, what are you stacking together? What's your lifting schedule like? What's your practice schedule like? And we would be roommates when we go on these trips, whether it be to a World Cup or a Pan Am Championships or something like that. So we would just spend a lot of time together talking about it and bouncing ideas off each other. And then I was trying to convince him to move to Ithaca so we could train, and he was trying to convince me to move to Penn State. And it took, 3 or 4 years for him to convince me to come down, but then ultimately I came down here.
Oh, that's why you came down.
Yeah. So, and we were like, well, if I'm going to come down, let's do something, like we've been talking about this, like all these different wellness things. Like, you just bought a hyperbaric. I have all this other stuff, like, and let's do it. So we ultimately decided to start it up, and it was self-serving, performance-based, just like you're saying. Like, how can we enhance our performance on the mat? And there's like this fine line, because you find people who are like, all right, well, I want to enhance my performance with this injectable or, this other thing. It was like, how can we get around that while being safe and not, destroying the spirit of the sport or anything like that. So we started to collect things, red light panels, the boots, cold plunges, hyperbarics. So we started collecting it all, but some was at my house. Oh, wow. Some was at his house. Some was at one of the shops, and then some was at Rec Hall. So we were like driving all over the place. Oh, wow, instead of like, let's have it in one location. And then the spot opened up, and he was like, let's put our juice shop upstairs. So he expanded his menu. Him and his wife, Kendra, expanded the menu at K2 Roots. And then we opened this up down here. It was a long time coming. Yeah. But I've noticed performance shifts all the time, and I'm looking for tiny percentages. And because, that's what's going to make or break you during, the course of a tournament or a season or anything like that. So it's cool to hear like your experience as a triathlete, or now just biathlete, what you're getting. So that's really cool that you've been able to experience a performance shift.
Yeah. So for me, it's, trying to push yourself to that limit, and you've got to sort of get as close to it as you can. And so one thing I noticed last summer when I started doing this is that limit, first of all, I was able to push it further.
Yeah.
And then even go past it. And so is that something you experience? I mean, you're already at that level, but I mean, is it something that helps you do that?
Yeah. A lot of it's just like kind of by feel. So for me, it's always been like, okay, how am I like perceptually feeling? And sometimes you can trick yourself. So it gets a little tricky, but being down here, Coach Cody and Coach Casey, they take meticulous notes. So they have like all of my practice plans for the last 3 years that I've been here. And so they know like how it's going. He's like, all right, this time we cranked it up. You wrestled 10 minutes of live this day, and we're going to, how are you feeling? And basically they'll ask those questions and like, be like, oh, he looked really good. He didn't look that good. Like something must be going on. And it's dependent too. Like I just had a newborn, so she's 2 months old right now. And it's just like sleep is like, you don't know how much you need sleep until you don't get it. I'm sure, and you have kids, right?
I have 3, and they're older, but I mean, I went through 5 years.
Yeah,
like
you
that.
remember
it. Yeah, it's huge,
Yeah.
And it's probably sleep, diet, exercise, fitness, working out, and then recovery. I mean, sleep's probably number one. I don't know.
Yeah. That's where all of our like damage repair happens, like when you sleep. So how can we optimize our sleep, but also optimize everything else? It's like you can have, what's considered a perfect diet. You can have like a great workout schedule, but if you're not sleeping, like you're struggling.
Yeah, you'll break down pretty quickly.
Fast. So I try to incorporate little naps here and there a few times a week. And a lot of times that'll happen in the hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah.
And it feels awesome. Like if I can take a nap in there, I'm like set for the next couple of days.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So that was like our main one. But yeah, so like how many shots am I able to take during a 3-minute period? How many scrambles am I getting in? How many turns am I getting, after I get a takedown? Am I getting push outs? Am I getting tall in my stance, or am I staying down? Like little things that, like, what would anybody care about that? But for me, it's hugely important. So I know if I make sure, and also like timing of eating, like if I eat at noon versus at 10:30, my workout's way worse because my body's still trying to digest that food. But if I eat at 10:30 and then go into my 1 o'clock workout, I feel great. So it's just interesting how timing of food works and all these little tiny things that you start to pick up and notice, and then it just becomes habit. So then, I have an early morning, like light breakfast, and then a bigger like brunch before I work out, and then a huge, not a huge dinner, but a pretty big dinner. So everything just, you don't know what you don't know. So you might think you're operating at 100%, and you are, but you're only at 50% of your ability. Right. So if I can increase that up to 70%, and now you're like working at 100% of that 70%. Well, this is great, So, and I think what people miss is they just don't know what's out there, and they don't know how good they can really feel.
Yeah, right.
So like you had this idea in your head a year and a half ago, like, okay, this is my limit. It's actually starting to fall back. Like, man, I know I can push harder, but I'm just like so sore and I can't recover. And then you start doing all this stuff, and now you're pushing that limit the opposite direction, which has got to be a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, and I think what you said earlier, you've got lots of data, right? And I think me too. I track these things.
Yeah.
And, I think competitive people often will focus on their rival or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you want to get the most out of yourself, that helps. But you have to understand kind of where you've been and where you're progressing and all that kind of stuff. And so, you just track that over time, and you experiment with different things. And this was an experiment, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I was kind of skeptical in some ways, just because, I'm at that age where you're kind of pushing the chance of like actually progressing becomes harder, I think. Yeah. But it's like all of a sudden my last race, I just had this pretty big leap,
Really?
Had one of the best bike times in the race. And
I'm like, wow.
Awesome. And I look at it in percentiles, not just compared to myself, but like where I tend to fall. And, it was like a 8 percentile increase.
Wow.
So, I'm like, yeah, okay. So now I'm going to start there this year.
Yeah.
And see what I can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's fun to track these things, and I do the same thing. I've obviously at a different level, but I just taking notes.
Yeah.
Different kind of metrics. I've had just about every device. The Oura Ring. I mean, the Whoop thing. obviously the watch and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I use a lot of the new AI stuff too to kind of track
That's cool.
and plan my workouts.
Yeah.
And also starting to do that with this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when I started, I was just doing everything every day.
Yeah.
As you know. But now I'm starting to kind of, here's my repertoire of workouts over a week, and I've gotten that dialed in because the recovery is much better.
Yeah.
I can do more.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, let's overlay the recovery tools here on top of that, maximize that and optimize it. And it's really great.
That's awesome.
Because there's emergent science, right? Like if you're do a heavy lift day, maybe the best thing's not to go into the cold plunge that day, at least right away.
Yeah.
Maybe later,
Yeah.
because there's some scientific evidence that it dampens the strength gains if you do it too soon. And then it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Red light therapy is pretty much an easy thing to do every day, and it's great.
Yeah.
But depression after a hard ride, after leg day, and that's the thing that's made the biggest difference, because before last year I would do a hard leg day and not really be able to ride that next day without kind of maybe getting some hip injuries or knee, but now I can. And so it's just compounding.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, I like to, I'm sure you've got a team of people who collect that data and can see the smallest thing. Yeah. Right. But it's important.
Do you ever do cold plunge before you ride?
I haven't tried that yet.
So that's a big thing. That's like the newest. It's a new thing people are doing instead of cold plunging after, because it stunts your muscle recovery and muscle growth, actually. If they do it beforehand, they'll get an uptick in testosterone, so they can actually work out harder.
That's interesting.
So yeah, it's really cool. So maybe you should test that out next. I'll see how that goes,
especially in the summer.
When it's not freezing cold outside, snowing all over the place.
Yeah, right now, I'm I have an elaborate kind of setup in my basement for the cycling and stuff like that. So, but that sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, come in so if you red light and cold plunge, that essentially what that does is the cold brings your mitochondria like closer, so to speak. So your electron transport chain gets closer.
Oh, wow.
So now you're more efficient at getting electrons across that medium. And I'm not like, I just kind of know about it. I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be. But then also the red light therapy combined with the cold plunge before a workout you'll see a big difference. I'm going to
try that.
I think that's your next stack that you can test out.
I've been trying to learn as much as I can. Is there a metric that you track or others track for you that's like critical thing? Whether it's, I don't know, like in cycling, it's VO2 max.
Yep.
That actually transports to mini sports, but your sport's a little different, like a lot of short burst, and then you have to maintain that. But is there something that you've tracked? Yeah.
So we do, we try to figure out VO2 max crossover point. So when do you go from burning fat to burning carbs?
Oh, gotcha.
So if we can push that for like higher and higher based on your heart rate. So you're going to have like a baseline heart rate. Mine's like 137.
Okay.
That's my crossover point.
I see.
And as soon as you cross that barrier, you're always burning carbs.
The lactate threshold?
Yeah. What's the name of that? See, that sounds about right.
Something like that, yeah.
I just know I'm at 137. If I get over that, then I'm only burning carbs. So I stay between like 130 and 135 for an extended period of time.
Endurance.
Right? Yeah. So I can push that. So it's like, okay, well, I used to I would do it when I was jogging or walking.
Yeah.
And I could only go a certain distance, and it was always based on my heart rate. And then after that, after I continued to like get better and better shape, my aerobic capacity got higher and higher. My crossover point was still the same, but I could go further. Oh, wow. So I could measure how much distance I was getting.
Longer,
So instead of it being 3 miles, I was starting to get 5 miles. So it's just like, as you progress, you start to figure those things out, which is kind of cool.
That is
and then also it's just how many leg attacks can I get? So the goal is like basically in a 3-minute period, I would like to get three attacks every minute. So 9 attacks a period. And that changes if it's like a clean attack versus if it's a scramble, if it's an extended finish, like all these different like little things will like kind of decide, how much output I've put in.
You're thinking this as you're wrestling?
No.
Okay.
Afterwards.
Oh, okay.
It's like, so talk to the coaches and be like, hey, like I didn't, like yesterday I was wrestling and I didn't shoot one time, but we were stuck in scrambles like this whole time. Like he would, I'd get to an underhook and I'd be like, go and shoot. And then he would drop down and then I'd have to like wrestle in that scramble position, which is great, to be able to adapt to different people. But like if you go in with like this rigid structure of how you want it to look, like if I say I have to get a shot off in 20 seconds, every 20 seconds I need to shoot.
Yeah.
Then you start getting in your own head and then you start thinking instead of like just being there and wrestling. That's where it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Because now if I'm not focused, like if I'm over focused on just getting that 20-second attack off, then other things are going to get in the way. Like I'll end up getting in a compromising position. Like one of my joints will be in trouble or something.
You
won't
be present, right? You got to be
got to be present. Got to be dialed in. And there's certain levels. Like you wrestle, you know, a guy who's bigger than you got to be more dialed in. So it's like if I'm wrestling, you know, a guy like Kyle Snyder, I'm probably not going to be able to get those 20-second attacks off. Gotcha. I'm going to have to like really be focused so I don't get hurt. Really, it's the biggest thing because he's like 230 pounds, whereas I'm, you know, 180 something.
Is your strategy to wrestle bigger guys?
So I since 2016, like my strength training is to wrestle bigger guys.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's how I like really build muscle and it's relative to my sport. Too. Exactly. Yeah. So I want to be as functional as possible relative to my sport. Yeah. And then I also want to be as functional as possible relative to being a human being.
Exactly.
So we're bipedal organisms. We have this cross-crawl pattern that we need to follow. Otherwise, things don't work properly. Yeah, right. And they become stagnant, and then there becomes excess pressure on certain things. And it's just like this whole spiral thing. And there's ways you can mitigate it, which is awesome. But yeah, so all of my strength training comes from wrestling bigger guys. And then all of my speed training comes from wrestling smaller guys.
That's interesting. Oh, wow.
So like I make sure that I go back and forth and I get those types of things. And to your point, like you're doing a heavy leg day, when I wrestle someone big, the next day I got to wrestle someone small because I'm like stuck in the mud, you know, or if I wrestle someone small, I typically want to use that speed so I can try to wrestle someone big. So I kind of rotate and kind of, a lot of it is just, I've done it for so long that I know like kind of who I need to wrestle. And sometimes just wrestle a guy who's your size and you just got to see how you do with both. You know, am I fast? Am I faster? Am I moving my feet well? Right. Or do I feel like I'm stuck in the mud? And if I get to him, can I throw him into the ceiling and then back on the mat? Like that's things I kind of work out, which is fun.
I guess another parallel between like cycling and wrestling would probably be strength to weight. I mean that. Right. And so is that something how do you dial that in? I mean, because you got to be as strong as you can be. Yeah. But maintain the weight you need to weigh.
That was a big deal for me going at like this past 2 cycles because I was having to weigh in at 163 and you only have 2 hours to recover. So, and last year my highest weight was like 185. Wow. So I was big going down there. So I was having to lose 22 pounds.
And what period of time?
It was like a 10 to 12 week period. And then you kind of get to that final stretch. And I try to pull my weight down to like 173-ish. And then if I can maintain that weight while eating the right number of calories, eating the right foods, timing, drinking enough, doing everything I need to be like as perfect as possible. And then I would drop down that last 10 to 12 pounds in the last week.
How'd you do that?
There's a whole science behind it.
Gotcha.
And we have, Penn State has a really good team. Sam Calvite is his name. He runs a training lab out in California. Okay. And he helps with a lot of the weight cuts, but then the coaches have been doing it for 16 years. So they kind of have a good idea of what needs to be done and how to pull back when you need to, how to ramp up when you need to. Because sometimes you just need to put in the work. Like you're not sweating in that 1 hour. You're going to have to keep going. That is a lot of like, it's cumulative. So the 12 weeks before I'm going to compete, like I know I got to be dialed in. Like I have to be dialed in to get down to that weight. So yeah, when I was down there, it was a lot about like my hydration, a lot about like just so many different things of how can I optimize my performance at this weight. Because in the Olympics, you only get 6 weight classes, which is like brutal. Like you go from 125 up to 143. Wow. That's a huge jump. And then 143 to 163, another huge jump. And then 163 to 189. Wow. So like there is no in between there.
My goodness.
So like even if I weighed 185, like I'm still undersized to wrestle that next weight class.
Yeah. Right.
So, and David and I were training partners, and he was Olympic champ at 189 in 2021, and then was trying to do the same thing in 2024. And I could make the weight. I can make 163. It just took a ton of work.
I bet.
And as you get older, it's just not as easy. You know, like it's just different, you know.
But they have ways to do that without paring down muscle too much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But a big thing is you don't want to lose too much fat either. So some people would just try to lose all of their fat, and then it actually causes more problems.
Right.
You know, so you actually have to shrink your body. Like you have to, like you want to keep like this a percentage of your fat on you because you need it to burn. You know, you need it. And you don't want anything to happen. Like there's so much that goes into it. It's crazy. From hormones to all of it. Like if you go too long, your hormones are turned off. Yeah. Like your thyroid function, your adrenal function, like all of it, the whole thing, right? The whole thing. And it's, there's a lot into it, and you kind of got to pay attention to it all. And that's what's interesting about a weight loss sport. Like you have to pay attention. Yeah. Like it's just it's just different. So much different. Like I have a bunch of buddies who are, you know, football, lacrosse, soccer, hockey. Like I know all these guys, and, you know, I'm just asking them questions and like what they're doing. And it's not even like, they don't have to worry about that because they're eating a good meal before their game. They're doing like, you know, they're not having to lose a ton of weight. Some of them have to gain weight. Yeah. So
it's not as precise.
Yeah.
It sounds like yours is surgical.
But they're super freak athletes. Like, I'm like, dude, you guys are awesome. Like, this is cool to watch you. And I love talking to people who are like at the peak of their field. That's like one of my favorite things to do. Yeah. Like, just like, what are you doing? Like, how are you figuring this out? Like, what's your process like? And even talking with you, like, didn't even know that you were doing triathlons and biathlons. Like, well, what's he doing? And you're like, 8% increase in performance. That's insane. Like, that's awesome. Yeah. You know? Dude. So the other day, Leanne was in town. She went to the eye doctor, and she was like, God, I'm blind, but for the first time in 8 years, this is the first time my vision hasn't gotten worse. And she said, I was raving about it. And then Eric came by and he said, I hate to one up you, but tell us.
Yeah. I mean, I went to the eye doctor a couple months ago, and doctor was looking at me like, your eyesight's actually improved. And, you know, that doesn't happen very much at my age. Yeah. So she wondered about different theories, you know, might that be? Like, she thought, well, the way we approached your corrections last time maybe dialed it in. And because I had these, you know, some glasses for computer vision, some for long distance, some for close up. And I said, she said, so it must have been that, you know, when you were wearing those ones for the long distance, I got news for you, doc. I didn't wear them at all. I said, so, I mean, it's because, you know, they were, I don't know, it just, they didn't work for me. Really. So I said, no, I said, you know, I don't know. I mean, I have been doing this red light therapy. And I mean, I think that's probably the most logical thing. I don't know, but you know, so who knows? It's an experiment, and, you know, not controlled and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, like, even this winter and beyond the eyesight, like on wood, I was around sick people all winter here. Nice. Didn't get sick at all. At least. So I think that, you know, the impact of these things on the immune system is also something that matters a lot. Yeah. Right. But the eyesight improved.
That's awesome. Yeah. That is so cool. I had an experience similar to that. Like, I used to wear glasses, and mine was definitely because I was staring at a computer screen in college, and like I was just like playing a ton of video games, and like I was just kind of a ding dong. And then I stopped doing that, and then I started like protecting my eyes, like with blue light or anything like that. I had blue blockers, and changed my light bulbs to incandescents, and like trying to, like, again, find that little percentage that would make a difference. Get out in the sun every morning, started doing red light, and I was just like, you know what? I don't really need these glasses. This was like 2019. And I went to the doctor, and, you know, they were checking my vision, like, oh, it says here you have a prescription, but with this test, you just got 20/20 in one eye and 20/15 in another eye. I'm like, no way. Wow. You know? And I was just like, okay, this is cool. Like, this is awesome. And so my vision I was like, I forget what my prescription, but it was progressing worse. You know, like when I was in high school, I think I was like -0.5, -0.75, which is like nothing really. And then it kept getting worse, and I was like at -1.75. And then I stopped doing it, and like didn't go for a while because I'm like not wearing my glasses and didn't care. And then it like came all the way back down, and they were just like, you don't need anything. I was like, yes, let's go. This is great.
I think the doctor was, she said, you know, sometimes we don't see much degradation. It's very unusual to see actually improvement. Yeah. So I feel like, I felt pretty good about
That's
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like such a cool, like if that's the one thing you get out of this, like that is unbelievable.
Well,
not to mention all the other stuff.
Yeah. You know, and also I got to say, like, you know, a lot of people in my orbit, you know, I'm 54. And so there's a lot of people on lots of medication. And a lot of those people will say to me, like, you know, God, you're at a lot of gyms, you know, you're this gym, that gym, and then Vitality. I'm like, yeah, it's the best investment.
Yeah.
You know, because it's, you know, I've had hardly any money expended on healthcare.
Yeah.
So this is just a amazing benefit, like a protective health.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, what do they say? Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right?
Oh, yeah.
So like if you can just stay on top of it,
yeah,
you're probably like, there might be a chance you get sick or like, you know, it happens or like something catastrophic happens. Like, you know, the hospital is there for a reason. Like we need it, you know, like if I get hit by a bus, I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm not going to, you know, come to do cold plunge, you know, I'm going to like try to go get my leg fixed.
Let me get in there first before you do that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, doc. I got to go do this real quick.
Yeah. He's bleeding out.
Yeah, please. This is not medical advice. Please do not take any of this as medical advice. It was like the disclaimer. My wife goes, I told her what we were doing and she goes, well, maybe in your intro, you should say like, this is not medical advice. I'm like,
oh yeah.
I guess I probably should say that, you know,
a little bit of a disclaimer.
Yeah. Disclaimer. But no, it's cool to see that, you know, like because I think N of 1 is like the best data that you can get.
Sure.
You know, even if it is placebo effect, you're still getting better.
Yeah.
Like that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like who cares, you know? And then if you can stack things on top and it's just like, okay, well, there's some things where you're like really hopeful that it works, but then it just doesn't. Yeah. And you're like, oh, well, that didn't work. Exactly. You know, but other people have results with it. So it's like, all right, well, they're having results. That's great. Like, you know, good job. And then you have to move on to the next thing, whether it be, you know, like some people are raving about different diets. Like, and a lot of it's just like, well, get rid of all of the like processed things, you know, and whether you're, you know, carnivore, keto or vegan or vegetarian, whatever, just get rid of the gunk, you know, and then clean it up. And then you can start to realize that. And everyone tries to take, there's a guy I follow. His name's Joel Green. He calls it baby talk. He's like, when people say carnivore is the only way or veganism is the only way, he's like, that's just baby talk. Like there's so many different like things that you need. Like the gut bacteria that you have, super important.
Microbiome is critical. Yeah.
And how are you going to balance that out? You know, everyone's a little bit different. And not to mention like, this is another thing that maybe you've tapped into or not, but red light therapy in the sun on your gut microbiome makes a huge difference. Makes a huge difference. And just feeding your bacteria, you know, whether it be, you know, you need to feed it with prebiotic fiber or certain reds or greens or whatever, it's going to make a big difference in your energy production. And
huge,
you know, we work together with these little bugs that we have inside of us. And when people start to, you know, become dogmatic, that's when I'm like, put the brakes a little bit and like, let's figure it out. You know, what's working for you now might not work for you in the future. And I've dealt with that. I've been very dogmatic in my younger years, and maybe I still am now. I try not to be, but I just figure out what works for me at the time. You know?
Yeah, I've been sort of obsessed with fitness and health and nutrition for about 15 years.
Yeah.
So I've listened to, you know, I don't know, thousands of podcasts, read most of the books on all these things. And, you know, and meanwhile, doing my own experimenting, figure out, because ultimately it's got to be what works for you and what you're doing and things like that. And then here I hear people who are on different parts of that journey now.
Yeah.
Right? You know, one guy's in a carnivore diet and you know, and it's working.
Yeah.
A lot of those things are short term. They're going to work short term, you know, but then they have all these sort of later term consequences, right? So if you don't have a balance of those kinds of things that you're mentioning, it'll catch up with you eventually, even though you might lose a bunch of weight initially and all that kind of stuff. So, I've experimented with a lot of those things, and you know, now just eat really good food. I do experiment a little bit with you know, just timing of eating and stuff like that, and that was just, you know, again, what worked for me, you know, and my workout regimen, and it started actually. There's a thing in cycling, you know, especially I was for a while doing longer rides and longer races. So if you become fat adapted, you know, train your body to burn all that fat we have, then you can just go and go and go and go and not have to sit there and, you know, munch on a whatever.
Honey stick or whatever. Yeah.
Because when I first started doing that, I'm like, you know, to do a 100-mile bike ride, you're just, you're digestion.
All the goo.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And so I pretty much at that point, I got a handle on that,
Yeah.
And I used to, like, I joke with friends, I'm like, it's actually good to be hungry,
Yeah.
and like most people walk around, they're never hungry because they don't ever get to feel that. Parents always struggle with what to do when your kids get a little older.
Yeah.
After Halloween. With
Yeah.
Halloween. And so, after a couple of years of just gluttony, we're like, okay, we got to cut this off at some point.
Yeah.
So like, we'll give them one night. The next day, we grounded up all their candy, put it in like a big bag, and then put it in the trash can outside.
Yeah.
And we went for a walk, and we're coming back down, and they're like probably 3 and 5. They got stacked these little things. They're trying to get into the trash can. So, it's like, anyway, so sugar, obviously sugar's a big draw. And if there is one evil, I think sugar, not all of it, but the added stuff is probably not great for us in a lot of ways. But yeah.
A lot of the processed stuff. I mean, it just comes down to how is it processed?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They're like, oh, your body doesn't know any different between this and that. And I'm like, well, that can't be right. My body's going to know the difference between, unpasteurized honey and processed sugar that's in a Coke. Like it's going to be it's going to feel different. My body will know what's natural and what's not. So I think some people are like, oh, nope, you're crazy. You're not doing it. It's like, all right, well, fine. That's fine if that's what you think. Okay, we'll move on. We'll move on from there. But
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So, what is something that you're curious about, expanding in your own health journey? You seem pretty meticulous on everything. You have any goals? You're like, all right, well, I have this 8%, actually I do want to, I want to go hike Mount Everest or something. I don't know. Do you have any goals set for this coming year or anything you want to change?
Well, so yeah, I do. And one goal I have every year is to be better than I was the previous year.
Great goal to have.
Yeah. And so I can track that by doing the same race and seeing how I do, or sometimes it's relative to other people, what percentile do I come in this competition? But last year I had 3 second places. And so what I'm telling my kids and myself tonight, second place isn't really acceptable. So, sometimes you can't control that, right?
If you ain't first, you're last.
Exactly. So yeah, this year I'm going to go back to at least one of the same venues, and I want to win. That's
very cool.
But how I'll actually measure that is by doing better than I did last year.
Yeah.
And things like that. I think that one thing I really like about Vitality, so this is something that you're not probably there yet with this because you're still competing at such a high level and you're a lot younger. But, a lot of people I hear you can buy these red light panels.
Yeah.
You can get a cold plunge in your backyard and you can get a sauna. There's this movement, right?
Yeah.
And somebody was telling me the other day, on Facebook Marketplace, a lot of people bought that stuff and then they didn't use it.
Yeah.
But for me, all of this actually, it's also a conscious choice. I actually like the social piece.
Yeah.
I like coming in here, for example, and y'all say hi.
Yeah.
And I get to know people.
Yeah.
The staff, but I've also other people.
Yeah.
And then I go to other different gyms around town. And then group cycling, so I like the solitary stuff myself sometimes too.
Yeah.
But, so goals are very important to me as well, but part of it's just the journey and the process, and I think, that's increasingly become important to me.
Yeah.
It's it's not easy to meet people, not easy to get to know. And one of the things that, as a social scientist I study is the importance of these acquaintances. You might not know everything about a person, but it's you see them walking down the street and you're like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
It's really important for our well-being. And so it is part of the process. And I like that dimension here.
Yeah.
Getting to know a lot of people here.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Our goal was, our 2 pillars of David and I built this on was optimize your wellness. So we want your performance to be, as great as you want it to be, but then also wellness together. We want it to be a third place that people can come without having to go, go to the bar or doing something that's not going to benefit your health. Hey, let's go sauna. Let's go grab a sauna and 30 minutes. We'll hop in the cold plunge, then we'll get out of here. It's just that community building. I feel like we're so isolated now, especially with our phones and computers and oh no, I have all my friends on, Fortnite that I play with and this. It's well, it's not the same.
It's not.
You know, it's not the same, like being face to face talking, or, you know, just sharing an experience. You know, sharing a sauna is like incredible. You know, like every time after practice, we go in and there's 10 of us that are in there, you know, and we're just talking about nothing really, but it's just how you bond. And it's just so much different than if you're just like texting in a group text, you know? So
absolutely.
I think that was a big piece, and I'm really happy to hear you, you know, say that you enjoy that part, because that was really one of our goals.
Yeah. The optimization of performance, I've noticed the social piece has been really good. The other two things that I say this means to me is, one is, you know, daily life, 3 kids, job that's, you know, I'm in pretty high level in my field. There are moments that are stressful. And so this is also just an amazing way to kind of manage that, healthier than others. And then the other thing is beyond performance and things like that, which speaks to a lot of different people. But I think that the population is aging, but longevity. I mean, that's all these things. You know, the evidence is coming forth. It's not just about the sort of short-term thing, but longevity. And you get, it's funny how you get to increasingly think about that.
Yeah.
People will talk about, you know, like life expectancy, for example. But for me, it's about the quality of life expectancy. So I want to continue to do what I'm doing. Yeah. You know, I want to sort of mitigate some of the things that naturally often happen.
Yeah.
And I think to do that, you need to be proactive. You know, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, people, I think knowledge now is pretty widespread. Yeah. You know, lifting weights is good for bone density and keeps you from falling and all that kind of stuff. But if you have the means and, you know, the opportunity, these kinds of things, I think can make that quality of life really great. Yeah. You know, and so longevity is something that I think about a lot. Yeah. You know?
Health span versus lifespan.
Exactly.
You know? Like who wants to be bed, you know, you're 90 years old, but you cannot move. You're stuck in a bed on a ventilator, you know, forever. It's like, well, I don't want that.
Yeah.
You know, like I want to be able to move and get outside and, you know, play with my kids, my grandkids, my great grandkids. You know, that's something that I'm looking forward to. Is like, okay, like right now I'm really enjoying being a dad. I have 4 kids and,
4 kids.
Yeah.
What's the
6, 4, soon to be 3, and 2 months.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I had one less, but they basically crunched
Yeah. It's been so much fun. I mean, and it's hard. It's definitely hard, but like, just thinking like I'm investing in myself but I'm also investing in my kids. Like I know that I'm going to be there. Well, I hope, you know, I hope I'll be there and pray that I'll be there. But it's just really, really cool. I've always been interested in longevity. Like how can I want to optimize my performance, but I want to feel good for the rest of my life. Yeah. You know, and you know, there's certain things that you do that probably aren't the best, you know, nobody's perfect.
No, for sure.
And some people want like these different experiences. Like, you know, in college I was a ding dong, and I remember like having great times with them, and then, you know, whether it be like I used to drink Diet Mountain Dew all the time, like all the time, and and I would have any time of day, didn't matter, like 11 o'clock at night I'd drink one and be able to go right to sleep. And like had no idea like what I was doing to myself. Oh yeah. And
I was Diet Coke.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, it settles my stomach.
Yeah. Yeah. You always justify it for whatever reason. You'll figure out how to justify it.
Sure.
But it's kind of so like I was just like thinking about that, and it was a couple of years ago. I'm like, I'll try Diet Mountain Dew again. I tried it and like I took one sip and I was done.
Isn't it amazing?
This is disgusting. Yeah. Like, I can't believe I did that. Yeah. You know. But yeah, it comes back to like, you know, you're going to do things and you'll justify, you'll get through it. But then you look ahead, and I don't think anybody really you don't want to look too far ahead and like live there. You don't want to look too far behind and live there. You want to be in that present moment.
That's right.
But you would be remiss not to plan for the future a little bit. Oh, and what you're doing now is planning for your future. That's right. You're setting yourself up to where, you know, 40 years from now, you're going to be still biking. You know, you're going to be like doing all sorts of these crazy things.
So one of the other goals I have is like, if I can maintain myself long enough, I mean, I might be the last man standing. No, but honestly, cycling and swimming are 2 things you can do well into your, you know, 70s at least. Yeah. And, you know, I'm not near there now, but I think actually, you know, if I continue to do this and, you know, I could become, you know, more like competitive, you know, more competitive nationally. Yeah. The other thing you mentioned parenting, because I was, when you said the ages, it reminded me of my kids. And I used to have this thought about how, you know, how hard it is to be a parent.
Yeah.
And all the things I probably did wrong and said this and said that. But the thing that I know that I did well is live by example.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about like one race in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm running and doing pretty well, and I felt really good about it. About halfway through the run, it was just a 5K. My calf seized up and like it pulled pretty hard.
Yeah.
But I thought about it. I was just kind of dragging my leg. I hopped the rest of the way. And so my kids saw me finish that way.
Yeah.
And it's sort of stuck with them.
That's cool.
Like, and anyway, all this, I think what you're doing, both in the business side, but also your fitness and your health and wellness, for me, that's always been lead by example.
Yeah.
Not just for your kids, but other people.
Yeah.
But I think your kids, they see so much.
Mm-hmm.
Role modeling, we know this from social science, is a key learning mechanism.
Yeah.
We always think it's what we say.
Yeah.
Half the time they're not listening anyway, right? But they see stuff.
All of
it. They
it.
don't see stuff, right? And that's really critical. So I think that these kinds of lifestyles decisions are really important.
Yeah. My kids are always like, Dad, what are you doing today? You getting the hyperbaric, or are you gonna sauna? What are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go sauna. Like, you want to come? They're like, no, it's too hot for me. Which is like, but it's cool that they're asking about it and they know about it.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I didn't know. I had no idea what any of this stuff was. And to your point, like role modeling that just by having it, having access to it is something that is hugely important for the future, And, I have kids and I'm very fortunate to have had the success that I've had. And what I've seen over the last 10 years is this massive shift from high school kids. Like they would do it their own, they would do what I did. And now the high school kids now are like actually taking care of themselves, like heading into college, like they know all of this stuff and they look up to, me or David or, Kyle Snyder, whoever. And they're like, I got to do what they're doing. If I want to be the best,
absolutely.
I got to make sure I'm getting my sleep. I got to make sure that I'm getting outside. I got to make sure that I'm recovering. And it's like, wow, this is like, that's part of my, I'm not taking all the credit, but I'm taking some of it.
It's huge.
Because it's cool. And I'm like, wow, you guys are awesome. Like, keep it up. Like, keep going.
Yeah.
And I love that part.
One thing I study is youth criminal behavior.
Okay.
Youth involvement in substance use and crime and stealing, fighting, that kind of stuff. So my most recent project is just an assessment of how that has changed over the last 30 years.
Okay.
And so it kind of feeds into what you're just saying there. I mean, we hear a lot of things that are negative, right?
Yeah.
Kids they're watching too much of this, they're playing too much of that. But one thing we don't hear about is they are far less likely to fight, far less likely to actually use substances until they get to college.
Okay. Yeah.
But like as high schoolers.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're delaying a lot of those things that many people used to do.
Yeah.
I mean, all kinds of risk behaviors.
Yeah.
It's really dramatic.
Wow.
And so much so like there's this, thing called the Great American Crime Decline that happened between 1990 and say 2015.
Yeah.
And so it's something that fascinates me because I see it, with my kids. They don't believe me because they say, oh, we know kids who still do that stuff. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But compared to previous generations, the young people today, they're a lot less likely to do lots of deviance. They're more likely to care about their health. Now, they also have anxiety, and it's not a great thing.
Yeah.
There's been a rise in obesity, but I'm just saying that, there's been a massive shift.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It's athletically exposure through social media to people like you matters. They get to see that.
Yeah.
And they can relate. And they're like, hey, I can be not you, but like that.
Yeah.
Right? So this influencer follower thing sometimes gets a bad rap, but it has some good things.
Yeah.
Good points.
I remember being like super inspired. Like YouTube was coming out and I could watch videos, and there was this other company that actually started with wrestling. It's called Flow Wrestling. They've changed to Flow Sports, but I used to watch so many videos on there, and just like I was consuming so much content of wrestling, and I was like learning, my brain was just like seeing how people did it. And I was like, go try to copy it. And that idea of like mirror neurons, like you what you see, you're gonna do. So and I would see somebody do something really cool technique, and I would immediately grab my little brother and be like, dude, come here, I gotta try this. And he would crawl away, and I'd drag him by his feet back to the living room and start doing it on him. But it's so I got to experience that too. And I think that there was just like I think it ended up being just a positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
Because I would do it and then I'd get better and then I'd be like, oh, this is great. I'm going to just keep doing it. And it was just like better and better and better and better and better.
Absolutely.
And I think it's really cool that just you see this improvement in certain areas. Like, no, but we're not perfect, right? We still have the anxiety. We still have the obesity. We still have people that like, they need help, and I think the more we can just talk about it and like, and really help people, like if I can go out and if I can make one impact on one person, like this podcast worth it, or that post I made about whatever was worth it, and if it's influencing people in a positive light, then that's great.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, I think some people like, I remember people like, you got to get off your phone. Like, this is terrible. Like, this is horrible. And there are some bad parts to it. And there's some, you can go like what you're looking at matters. Like that's going to change how you think. It's going to change what you do. But if you have a cultivated positive experience online, like that is going to make a big difference.
Yeah.
And you can't avoid it. Like with my kids, like I know I'm not going to be able to avoid it because part of my job is I have to be on my phone. Like I have to connect with people in different ways that way. And they see it. And I remember my wife and I getting really upset that they kept asking to see our phones. And I'm like, she said this, we are always on our phone. Like they're going to mirror that too. For sure. So let's give them a positive experience while using the phone, whether it be cooking video. Like my kids love cooking videos now. Like that's their thing. Ella Joa just constant, hey, can we watch cooking videos?
Yeah.
Emmy wants to watch ballet. She's like, hey, can we watch dancing videos? And Leo, he's not quite there yet. He wants to look at pictures of all like videos and pictures from when he was a kid.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
Yeah. So he's like, can we look at pictures from when Emmy was a baby? And I was like, yeah, sure. Cool. Let's go. Like, and he just loves all those videos, like those home videos. I remember loving those too, but so it's cool.
Technology is like, like anything else. It's not absolutely bad or absolutely good, but it's a lot of ways it's, I struggle with it. Like, you let your son sit there and play Fortnite.
Yeah.
How long?
Yeah.
My son was a bit shy, and I remember my wife and I talking about this. Maybe he should be out doing that. Mm-hmm. One day I hear him just, talking, and I mean, I was like, that's my son to other people, his friends online.
Yeah.
Right? And so, I thought, well, okay, I mean, that's interesting because that's the social interaction. It's not the one that I had as a kid.
Yeah.
But it's also knowledge, like there's so much information that they can get access to. Seeing people who are really good at something who can show them in different ways, not just for them. Like my first race last year, I got my at the beginning, it's a mad rush. You're running from some place to the water.
Yeah, people
are coming together. Got my goggles kicked off.
Oh,
it's kind of hard to swim with the goggles.
Yeah, and
I'm like, man, what's so. Obviously you can Google that and stuff like that, but I just went to Facebook and well, you put two swim caps. So you put your swim cap on, your goggles on, another swim cap over, and that problem fixed.
Yeah,
so it's like, but the kids, they learn a lot. You have to monitor it. Mm-hmm. It's right. Cause it's the content, but it's a neat opportunity and it's a great time we're living in.
Yeah. Well, and I always, there's sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I lived 150 years ago to do this. And then I'm thinking about it. I'm like, man, I would be just focused on survival. Like, it's like, I don't get to do any of this cool stuff, and like Coach Kale, he always talks about like how, like we play a game, I get paid to play a game. Yeah, right. This is sweet. This is there's no time in history that you've ever been able to like do this. I mean, I guess if you want to be a gladiator, you get your head chopped off, but like this is like unbelievable opportunity that we have. Like we're so fortunate.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like a great time to be a human being is like right now. And everyone always focuses on the negative. Like everyone, anytime you look on the news or anywhere else, like people are always focused on the negative. And it's like, that's okay. I understand that. But also look at all this greatness that we have around us. Like it's such an unbelievable time to be alive. And I'm super thankful for it for sure. So
if it wasn't wrestling, what would you like? What was your other sort of thoughts?
I loved baseball. Loved baseball. But I was just so good at wrestling, and it was again a social thing for me because I was so good at it. I was small. I was really small as a kid. So
how did you figure out that
my dad and my grandpa both wrestled?
Okay.
And they were both coaches in wrestling.
Oh, wow.
So it was a family thing for me.
So
I wanted
around it the entire time,
whole time.
Birth, right?
My brother wrestled, and I wanted to connect to my dad. Like I wanted to be close to my dad. Like this is how we could connect and we could talk about wrestling and all that. He also played football and he did a little bit of baseball, but it was just a way that I could connect with him all the time. And he coached high school, so I wanted to spend time with him. And, you know, I'd leave school and not be able to go to wrestling practice, and he'd be gone until 5, and then I only get like an hour with him. Yeah. But then if I started going, being the manager and I started going, I'd be with him from 2 to 5 and then I'd be home with him. So I got more time with my dad, and I was like, this is great. So again, that positive feedback loop of like why I wanted to continue wrestling. And, but I loved baseball. I absolutely loved baseball. I love football, but I was too small. I was too small for both of those things. I was 95 pounds when I was a freshman in high school. Wow. 112 pounds sophomore year, 120 my junior year. And then my senior year, I ended up weighing 140, but I was still way too small. For football. For football, definitely. For baseball, even, I was too small, short. You know, I was like 5'7" when I was a senior in high school, and I grew like 2 inches in college. So that's like kind of I grew. Yeah. My freshman year, I was 141. My senior year, I was 165. So that was like what I'm known for is like going up a different weight class every year. Yeah. And it wasn't because I was trying. It was just like I grew an inch my freshman year. I grew another inch my sophomore year. And then I just decided to bump up my senior year. So that's interesting. Yeah, it just kind of happened. And it was cool that I was able to do what I was doing. But yeah, I think I would definitely tried to have played another sport. Yeah. Who knows where I'd be successful wise. You know, I work really hard and try really hard, and but sometimes your skills don't pass over and different things like that. You have a brother? And my brother was my brother too. He wrestled. Awesome wrestler. Loved football though.
How much older?
I'm 3 years older. Okay. And then we have a sister, loves soccer. She's 6 years younger than me. Okay. But yeah, it was like I was really I really wanted my brother to be great at wrestling, and he was great. He just didn't like to be out there by himself. Oh, I see. He wanted a team. He wanted to like, you know, interact. And I would get really frustrated with baseball and football because I'm like, you guys aren't trying as hard as I am. Yeah. You need to try harder. That's interesting. And effort was always such a big thing in my family. Like you got to put effort forth. Like as long as you're like doing your best and trying hard, you win and lose, that doesn't matter. Just continue to improve and try really hard. Yeah. So that's where I was at, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love health and longevity stuff. I love having, you know, Vitality Wellness Club is just a great spot for me because one, I get to connect with people, but I've accumulated so much knowledge that I can say, hey, like someone comes with a problem, like maybe look over here, like check this out. What do you, then go down this path a little bit and see what happens. Go down this other path and see what happens. You know, some people have just like, they're in different stages, like you were saying before. Everyone's in a different stage of life and in their journey, whether it be with their diet, their recovery, you know, their exercise, you know, their relationships, whatever. And I'm in no way a guru on anything, but I've just had experience and I've been through a lot and have had
exposed to a lot of great coaches, right?
Great coaches, great teachers, great people,
trainers.
So lucky. I'm so lucky, so fortunate, so blessed that I have that access. And I'm just like, okay, this is what I found out. Try this.
Have you thought of integrating any of that into the business? Like, you know, sort of programming and.
Yeah. So we talked about, what we're thinking about doing actually is basically doing like an ebook. Okay. So type of thing. Yeah. And doing them for like different things. Mm-hmm. So whether it be nutrition or performance or recovery or sleep or anything like that. There's a lot that you can go into.
Yeah. Because I hear it get regurgitated quite a lot, you know. But that'd be a good idea.
So we talked about doing that. And then also we talked about doing like workshops, you know. So, and I would love to do like maybe like a sauna Sunday where like members only, we come in, we're going to do a 30-minute, you know, something. And we're going to talk about sleep. Like everyone's going to talk about sleep. Yeah,
that's a great idea.
And like, hey, what's your experience? What do you need here? This is what I do. This is what, you know, I think is the best for me. And we had someone come in for a tour and I was telling him about the red light and how it's like helped my sleep a ton. Yeah. And he was like, what temperature do you leave your room at? And I'm like, actually, I leave it at this temperature. He's like, okay, yeah, I like mine a little bit colder. Yeah. I have this chili pad and like all this cool stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's how we like continue to get better.
Absolutely.
And like, that's the community.
Yeah. The nice thing is like everybody has a slightly different sort of experience or they've read this book or that book or podcast here. And so you get to bring that together. Yeah. And it's a shared sort of knowledge bank. Yeah. It really is kind of great.
And we all have our own filters too. So like you've filtered through thousands of podcasts, me the same. And now we've kind of distilled it down into what we do. Yeah. And then we can compare notes kind of. So I think that's really cool. So that's something I think would be really cool, like a sauna Sunday, or just like getting members together and hosting like little events. And I have so many people that come into town that are just like wealth of knowledge, and be like, hey, like, do you want to host a workshop?
Yeah.
You know, and just come on down and do it. So we just got to figure out the logistics of it and how it'll all work. And, but yeah, I think there's a lot more ways that we can integrate things like that.
Yeah.
And really for me, it was like kind of help my team first. You know, we have a great team here. Yeah. Leanne has been great. All of our part-time staff, great. Cycle staff, like awesome. And everyone just does a really nice job. And I want to be like, all right, well, how can I help you? You know, like, what can I do to help your performance? I want you to be great in here as a part of Vitality Wellness team, but I also want you to be great out there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I can't wait to interview Leanne. She couldn't, and because she does so many things. I mean, she is like all over the place.
Yeah, trainer,
adult volleyball. She has a foreign exchange student. She like does everything, and she's really cool. So I'm really happy to have her a part of our team. We have an unbelievable team.
Yeah, it really is remarkable.
Yeah, and unfortunately we lost a couple people who moved on, and that happens. I know that, but obviously we still love.
I still see them around town.
So. Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. So
yeah.
Well, this has been great. I don't want to take up any more of your time, and we could talk for another couple hours. This has been really fun. I appreciate it.
Fun for me too.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So that's a wrap. Episode 1.
All right, man. Thanks.